Good afternoon, everyone. Before we delve into the how you can access your mainframe from anywhere, I'm just going to give you a brief overview of NetCB. For those of you who don't know us, that's for the first time that you're actually attending one of these sessions. You are, as Boipelo mentioned, you are welcome to post any questions in the Q&A section. And as we progress during this presentation this afternoon, we will see how we can address many of your questions that you may ask. I'm going to switch off my video so it's not distracting, so that we can focus on the actual presentation. And after the presentation, I will also do a demonstration. Now, first of all, I'm going to do an introduction to NetCB, as I mentioned. Then we're going to do an overview of all the Micro Focus host connectivity solutions. It's very important that you understand the context in which we have positioned this particular solution and what Micro Focus brings to the party in terms of mainframe connectivity and solutions around mainframes. And then after that, we will do a demonstration as well. NetCB itself, company is a privately owned company based in Pretoria, even though we operate throughout the African continent. We have done projects all across South Africa as well as on the African continent. We are in our 18th year of business. We also see ourselves not only as a partner of many vendors, but we also innovate our own technology through our own software development. We do provide support services not only on the African continent, we even as far as the United States and as far south as New Zealand. And also we also have, but we do have a very strong African focus in terms of our solutions. Our principal strategy is rapid digital transformation. What we mean by this is we're always looking for solutions that can be implemented very quickly to transform certain systems within our organization at a rapid pace. We no longer can wait for these long ICT projects that take months or years for implementation. Quite often, by the time you implement, it's no longer relevant. So our clients, we've realized, need solutions instantly and at a rapid pace. And we focus on those specific type of solutions that help us in implementing this strategy. Our areas of expertise is very much focused around digital workspaces. This is how people collaborate, how they access their applications, how they share information, how they get access to applications as well. Then you have your cybersecurity space, which is a very large portion of our solution set today. And today's session specifically deals with the security aspect of access to your mainframe, but allowing people to access it from anywhere. And then we also facilitate hybrid cloud computing solutions for our clients where they want to start to take or use the benefit of cloud-based applications and services from that perspective. We have a range of technology platforms that we have partnered with, and we are registered partners with all of these vendors. Today, we're focusing specifically on the Micro Focus solution set, but we do have a range of technology solutions from a range of vendors that we feel is very important in the way we use building blocks to build solutions for our clients today. Now, when we start to talk about the mainframe today, if you look at what Forrester states is that 72% of customer-facing applications are completely or still very much reliant on mainframe processing. IBM themselves says that 80% of the world's corporate data still resides or originates on mainframes. It's a reality that we need to understand that mainframes is not something that is disappearing. It's not actually just old technology anymore. People tend to always refer to that as just legacy. But mainframes are still very much part of our lives today. In fact, in 2019, IBM had one of their best selling years in selling new mainframes in their history. And that is new mainframes that went out in the market. We need to understand that this is a platform, and the reliability that comes with mainframes are still very much part of our lives today. Even though we see all sorts of other platforms that have evolved over the years, mainframes are still very much part of our environments. Though when it came to secure access to these mainframes, quite often that has been neglected. And it's very old mechanisms or old approaches that we use to access these mainframes today. So what we're now looking at is how can we securely access these mainframes, and with new systems of engagement. It means that how can we make sure it falls in with our overall security architectures from a compliance and governance perspective, that the same kind of reporting that we generate for all our other systems, we can also now generate when we deal with our mainframes. Now, you're going to see this image later on today again, but we're going to talk about one component from Micro Focus, which is their host access management and security server. But what I wanted to highlight here is where we remove the direct access to your mainframe hosts. Now, when I'm going to refer to mainframes here, this can also be Unix-based systems. Any kind of host type of application that you need to access does not need to be accessed directly anymore through this solution. That means that you have a very strong wall of protection that we want to put in front of those systems, because frankly, it's quite a number of those systems does not have all those security mechanisms built in. A lot of those applications sometimes even have been developed in the late 70s or the early 80s, or have been maintained over the last 20 to 30 years. And to make those changes inside those applications is almost impossible. So we need to look at a different way of providing security to these systems. We're also going to talk about the simplification of access to this. And you'll see later on how we're going to simplify just through HTML access into these various applications that's sitting on your mainframes. But before we start, it's always important that you first have a very deep understanding of what is actually inside your own organization. One of the components that we understand is that currently, most of the time, people access mainframes using a range of terminal emulators, 3270 emulators, Unix emulators. There's a host of tools that people sometimes use, and there are many brands from many different vendors out there in the market today. So that is one of the first things that is important to understand what people have. Then you need to analyze that information to make most of what you already have in place. And then we go through a process of extending and complement what you already have in place in your organization. Now, when you look at the current challenges with terminal emulation, there's always this unmanaged configuration sprawl. I've seen many times, sometimes the configuration files is sitting on a shared drive on a network, or it's spread across many workstations across the network, but there's not a single point from where you can manage and control the configurations, the sessions, the printers. It's all a desktop-based kind of approach, a terminal kind of approach. you need to sometimes visit or have remote access to that person's workstation to be able to help them with the session. That can result in a business continuity risk. You sometimes have uncontrolled user behaviors. You tend to fail regulatory audits, or even we've seen cases where there's been breaches or lost or compromised data sets on the mainframe because of the lack of control. Now, one of the tools that Micro Focus provide is a host access analyzer. It's a discovery tool that you can run within your organization, and it will then analyze what is being used. It checks what applications you are using in terms of terminal emulators. It will go and see what kind of host sessions they are accessing. It will go and check what kind of applications you're accessing on the host. And that already will tell us, give us a lot more information of what is actually going on within your organization. So as I mentioned, it first identifies the products. Have you standardized on a single product, or are there multiple terminal emulators in the organization? The type of sessions that's in use. Now, when you look at these terminal emulators, are they running any kind of macros that's been saved inside the terminal emulators? What scripts are they executing? And then finally, building up the usage information, as well as giving you a complete inventory of those applications they are accessing on the mainframe. So basically, we analyze the environment, we collect the information, and based on that analysis, we can start to take actions. Now, it's not a requirement that you have to use this tool. We sometimes just recommend it, especially in very large organizations. We have a widespread of users using terminal emulations, and you're not sure exactly what the current state is. It is very helpful to make use of this tool. But nothing is dependent on using the other technologies that you will see shortly. Now, one of the components of Micro Focus is what I call the Micro Focus Plus. It is a modernization layer. It can provide to all your terminal sessions to basically bring those green screen applications alive and allow interaction from a desktop, creating new presentation layers, look and feels, and a completely modern interface, the ability to access these applications even from mobile devices without making a single code change on your mainframe application. There's absolutely no access to the mainframe or the configuration of the mainframe required in this process. That can all stay as it is. The mainframe administrators does not need to even get worried about the implementation of a system like this, because nothing needs to be changed on the mainframe. This is a system that is placed between the user and the mainframe, and that enhances the security and the experience of the user at the end of the day. That's why I also brought in application modernization into this conversation when we talk about being able to access these applications from anywhere. You can see within the Micro Focus emulators, they've got three different mechanisms. They've got the Rumba desktop, they've got the Reflection desktop. They all belong to Micro Focus. And now the Reflection for web, which I now call the host access for the cloud, is the part that I will specifically demonstrate later on today. Now, this becomes quite a market differentiator where you can modernize an application that may have been developed years ago with a simple layer that is being placed on top of the application. And it doesn't take a programmer again to do that. We train users on how to use these applications and how you can create the various skins that will be laid on top of these green screens that will modernize. And it depends on what sections you do want to modernize. It can be as simple as detecting a map or an address on the screen and being able to click on it, and it brings up a Google map based on that information. Or you can completely modernize the look and feel that it looks like a normal web interface, where in fact it is actually a green screen at the back end. So there's a host of these approaches that one can take to modernize this kind of environment. Now, this is a typical web-based application. You can see this is actually inside the browser, but look at what happened with Enter. Enter, and you'll see that later on during the demo as well. You can see the Enter key now all of a sudden has become clickable. It's a graphical interface. Or this is another example of a screen that has been modernized. It is a far more user-friendly interface. Users may recognize certain things. When they want to complete a date, they can, instead of typing the date, you can control the entry through a clickable button. Or even if someone wants to send an email, they can just click on the email button and it can open up your Outlook, and you can actually, or GroupWise, and you can send out an email. This is, for example, a typical screen that you tend to see, and we can modernize this page by having this look and generating graphs even from the data it has seen on that green screen. This is another example where we have various fields of information on this page, and we generate a tabular look and feel, which can be exported when you click on the export button straight into Excel from that green screen. And you know, sometimes it can be quite a mission to extract that data easily from a simple green screen. Even the ability to make the information available on web-based, on mobile-based applications, even that can be done. But it's far more user-friendly, easier for the users to engage in the applications that are already available on your mainframe. There's an example where there was an address. There was an address there, and they clicked on the icon. It detects that there's an address, and it will place a little icon people can click on, and it will actually bring up a map location. Here you can see some enhanced look and feel. This is the traditional classic mode when we use any one of the terminal emulators. This is a section where we added some components in adding multiple sessions on one screen, or simplifying the screen look and feel. Or we have the ribbon mode of the emulator, where we can add additional functions on the ribbon at the top of the page. This is if you're using the Windows-based client terminal emulator for access. Or there's even a user interface to be used on tablets, which is a touch screen that will even allow you to bring up a keyboard that you can use on a tablet device to access your mainframe session. Okay. So you can see from a modernization perspective, there's quite a bit that we can do. It makes things a lot easier for us. It makes it, the user experience is improved. You don't need to, for example, in terms of training, your training is reduced significantly, the training requirements, because sometimes to teach people today on how to use terminal sessions can be quite tricky. Especially some of us, I know we've grown, we were born basically in the age of mainframes. and grew up with it. But the new generation, unfortunately, they did not have that experience, and it can take a while before they get used to this, because they would like their friendly pages that they are used to with other applications. Another area that is very important is the protection of applications and data privacy, to make sure that you can comply to PCI DSS and GDPR and a host of other legal requirements and security mandates that we have. The problem that we see today is that most of these applications were built long before the age of PCI DSS or GDPR, etc. So the applications themselves does not recognize the fact that there's certain confidentiality that we now need to keep in place. And we can even address that issue via redaction. That allows us to actually tell our system or the layer that we put in place, when you see this kind of field on the screen, as you can see here, where we have an account number and a card number, to actually redact it. So the operator never actually sees that the actual account number or the actual credit card number, if they're not authorized to see that information. And that is how you can improve the confidentiality of the information that's being presented. And we, within the tool sets that we are being provided with, we have the ability to build these privacy filters and redaction rules that will eventually suppress that information on the screen. I hope you like this feature. Now, when we start to talk about that server I mentioned right at the beginning, everything runs around the host access management and security server. And in short, we quite often refer to it as MSS. Now, the first thing that this system does is to leverage off your existing identity and access management controls within your organization. If you are using Active Directory or some identity management platform, or any other kind of LDAP system, it makes use of the user credentials inside that framework that you're already using for all your identity and access management within your organization. We're not creating a new silo. We're leveraging off your existing identity and access management frameworks. We then can start to lock down various application settings when we start to define how people can access these different applications, whether it's through a web interface, whether it's through a terminal emulator, the configuration of those terminal emulators, everything can now be controlled from a central point. We can now also implement and move you from a very weak kind of authentication mechanism. And you know that on mainframes, quite often you are limited to those 8-character passwords and 8-character usernames, where we can now start to implement multi-factor authentication. The user sometimes does not even need to know what their mainframe login credential is. Depending on the mapping that we've set up front, and it will authenticate the user using his identity and access management credentials into the system. Another issue that we address is the communication between either a web browser or between a terminal emulation piece of software. We ensure that that is encrypted. Quite often those encryptions have not been enabled, and sometimes people sit with network sniffers and they can pick up usernames, passwords, etc., if they can decode the EBCDIC character sets correctly. That is how they can then grab credentials and then find an emulator where they can then log onto these mainframe systems. By using this system, we eliminate that kind of behavior completely. And then we deliver automatic mainframe sign-on at the end of the day. So this host access and management security server that sits here in the middle is the system that allows us to make use of multi-factor authentication mechanisms from mobile devices, from tablet devices, from normal workstations, from web browsers. We don't really care, but we leverage off your existing identity and access management framework, which in this case can be Active Directory, can be eDirectory, it can be the Micro Focus Identity Management framework, or any other identity management framework you may have within your organization. And we can facilitate this automatic sign-on to the mainframe host. So at the end of the day, we address access control, we address encryption, we address endpoint hardening in terms of the security, as well as data privacy, all in a single solution at the end of the day. That allows us to have the ability of prove who you are by using various authentication mechanisms, just standard username and password or smart cards or biometrics or any other factor you want to bring within this ability. But then in terms of role-based access can also be implemented. Based on your role-based access, it will determine what kind of sessions you are allowed to access and whether information will need to be redacted that you see on the screen at the end of the day. So what we basically do with our MSS server is to integrate, to bring the enterprise security that most organizations do have in place today and combine it with the mainframe. Okay, where we can actually log in various cards, etc. So it's a question of leaving the dark ages of the security of the mainframe behind. And now we're going to start to talk about the zero footprint web access to the host. One of the biggest challenges that organizations have with some of these applications is that you need Java sometimes on the workstation. You know that Java support has been dropped by most browsers. That has fallen away completely. We're now shifting to an HTML5 type of access to access these mainframe applications. From anytime access on-premise or from within the cloud, we don't care. There's no Java involved at all anymore. So any browser-based HTML5 access can be used to access a host of these applications. You have a centralized configuration and delivery for these applications. We can also protect access to hosts that you access through SSH, for example. And we can even protect those sessions and you access them through a web browser. And then we also have the Active Directory and standard LDAP integrations. So how this basically works within the management and security server, and both of them can run on the same server depending on the size of your organization, or it can be running on a dedicated system, or it can even be clustered. That system is installed within the organization. And this system will then use the various protocols to access either the AS400s, the Unix systems, mainframe system, or even if you have Unisys in your environment, accessing the Unisys systems. But on the client side, we only need to worry about HTTPS access into the system, which means now this can be opened up to the internet. Your users can be anywhere. They go through the authentication that is required to be able to access the application. They verify, they validate that through their multi-factor authentication. And then only the sessions that's been assigned to them can be accessed. And if you then added those multiple layers, only the information they are authorized to see, they will see at the end of the day. Okay, any further questions so far before I jump into a demo? Okay, let's quickly get into demo. Now, you may ask me, how is it possible for a company like NetCB to be able to run a mainframe? Well, we're actually running a mainframe operating system within our offices in our data center. But it is a trick that we used. A few years ago, actually 2 decades ago, some of the older IBM operating systems were published in the public domain. Thank you, IBM, for that. And some very clever people ported it onto the Linux platform so that we can run the MVS operating system on a Linux server. And that is what we're actually doing. So this is a full-blown MVS operating system that we're going to access during this demonstration. It's not just an emulator. It is actually running MVS. We're actually in the process of installing the COBOL compilers and Fortran compilers later this week, as we have some COBOL training that we want to perform within our own environment. The first component that I'm going to access will be the administration console. I'm going to log in as an administrator. And you can see I've got 2 sessions defined here. Unfortunately, the license key that I've been provided with Micro Focus only included the web-based emulator software and not the one for the desktop emulators, which is typically this type of interface that you will see using on a normal emulator. So for now, we can only work really with the web-based access into our mainframe. Now, first of all, there's quite a number of configuration settings that one can do. You can set up the general security, whether you require HTTPS access just to access this management server. I actually forgot to tick that off. Do we want to restrict the administrator to only be able to log in from a certain location? We already have got the configuration parameters for secure shell access. If you have certain systems that you need to access via secure shell, it provides you with all of those configuration capabilities. Sometimes we need to import certificates from other systems so that this system can present those certificates. And you have a whole certificate management section. Also, we can import all your trusted certificates that you need to trust within your environment. Another system that also even allows your fat Windows client emulators to access the mainframe from anywhere. Unfortunately, you can see I haven't activated it. It's a security proxy. It means that no, not even your traditional emulators will access the mainframe directly. All of them need to run through the proxy, because that ensures that your mainframe is completely secure, and the only way people can access the mainframe is via the security proxy. Then there's also the authentication and authorization, and here we can add multiple LDAP sources. If you have multiple user communities, multiple sources of identity information, we can provide all of that within this environment. Whether you want to do single sign-on through Windows desktop authentication, even that can be done. Obviously, there's a place where we can do our product activation. I can also configure automated sign-on. There's also the metering capability that allows us to monitor and understand how the system is being used, who is using what sessions at what time. There's also a terminal ID manager, and this is where you can manage the terminal IDs that's been assigned. Those of you that have got a lot of mainframe experience will understand how terminal ID management is a very critical component, because certain usernames or logins may be associated with specific terminal IDs. And that is what you do specifically on this page. If you have multiple management servers in large organizations, we can define one of the servers as the master and the others are slaves in this configuration. And then obviously we can run various reports. For example, if I quickly want to see who has logged onto the management server, I can see, okay, I see Cobus has authenticated at some point earlier today or on the 7th. And there's a whole history of authentication that's been provided. You can also look at who has been assigned to what sessions as well. Even that information you can see during this process. Now let's start with setting up a session. I'm quickly going to click here on add, and you can see the product that I use. And normally here it will, for each type of access technology you have, whether it's the zero footprint emulation, or whether it is a Rumba application, or whether it is the reflection desktop emulator Pro edition, etc. You will see all those product names on here if they've been configured and licensed on your environment. I'm going to call this one my live demo session, and I'm going to quickly launch it from here. And the first thing it's now doing is to ask me, where do you want this session to connect? First of all, what type of connection is this? Is this a 3270 connection? Is it the IBM 50-50, VT, UTS, ALC, or T27 connection? So we already have a number of protocols, session types that we have. I'm going to quickly type in the name of our mainframe, and I know the connectivity is on port 3270 in this case. Yes, when I start up the session, please connect to it. There's various options I can now go and configure in terms of this session that I'm defining, whether it's the terminal session, just the standard, or the extended version of the session, of the protocol that must be used. Also the model, the terminal model I need to use. That means in terms of, are we going to use the extended layout and character display, or just a standard one, or do we need a wide screen with 132 columns, etc., or even a custom configuration can be defined here. If you have the various terminal IDs that you upfront want to use, and my setup at the moment is of such a nature that I don't need to provide a terminal ID. You can enforce encryption as well for this session. I'm not going to worry about that right now. The keep alive packets means if you do not set the keep alive packets, it will disconnect your session automatically after a period of inactivity on the browser. Now, you all know what happens on the mainframe if someone does not log off properly. You need to go and clear that session first before the person can log in again. So one can make sure here that the session is kept alive, but I'm not going to really worry about that for now. I can also ask the system whether it must specify a unique device name because of the configuration of the applications that I need to access based on the LUs that's been assigned to me. Or use my ID manager where I can say select it from a pool name or a specific client IP address, etc. There's a host of these configuration options that you are used to that one normally set up on a terminal emulation piece of software. I'm not going to worry too much about that at the moment. Or I can just ask you to generate a unique device name. And whether I want to enable emulation tracing. Tracing means it will start to keep screenshots of this particular session. Okay. I also have the ability now to go through various display options. I can say, yes, please enable hotspots you detect on the screen. I can adjust my keyboard mappings because we know our PC keyboard does not look like the mainframe terminal keyboards. And we can make sure, but by default, these mappings have already been done, and you can see how they've been actually allocated. Do you have any macros that should be executed when this person enters a session? Do you want to enable file transfer capabilities as well between the browser and the workstation and the mainframe? Do you want to enable copy and paste on the session? That can also be allowed. You can also say, yes, the person should be able to print and go and select a specific host LU name that should be used, or even if there's a terminal name association, you can actually use that. In this case, I haven't enabled printing, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. And then we can also go and enable plus if we really want to, but I don't have a plus customization file at the moment, so it's not going to really help me to enable that plus because I didn't create a customization screen for that purpose. And then whether there's any other user preference rules you want to enable for the user, whether they can actually go and set some of these settings themselves. Well, I'm not going to allow that for now. So I'm going to quickly click on save. And you see it has opened up my mainframe session. You can see I'm sitting within a browser at the moment. But this is my configuration process I'm going through at the moment for this particular session. I can just quickly log on and see whether it actually works. And I can quickly get in here and I can see, yes, I can see my session is logged onto the system at the moment. Let's get back quickly here and I can log off from this particular session. So I know my session, my access is working just fine at the moment and I can exit it. So now I have a session that has been created, but I'm going to log in as a user quickly. And you can see it says there's only 2 available sessions at the moment. That's because I have not assigned access to that session. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly search on my name. I don't want to search, I wanted to search on my name. Pick up my name and I'm going to say, Provis must also have access to that session. I'm waiting for it and it's mapping at, it's been updated. So if I quickly go here now, I can now also access that session and it's going to log in as a different user. There we go. Just to show you here at the bottom, you can see here how this enter key has already been hotspotted. Even my F3 key, I can just click on F3 here to terminate this session. So if I quickly want to load my menu again, there we're back in. So I don't need to, I can now use, and this is how certain elements on these pages, it will already detect and it will hotspot them. So you can actually use your mouse to just click on those sections on this page. But I am sitting inside the browser and I'm accessing my mainframe session. Obviously now the process, and this will depend on the applications, it will depend on the uniqueness within the organization, where one will now be able to use that plus capabilities to create skins and layovers on many of these pages that will enhance and improve that user experience. I will normally not, if users are used to this kind of access, don't immediately throw that kind of display into their faces, because then they will be completely lost. We normally see the first phase of the implementation of this is to first just web enable access to your terminal sessions. They allow the printers to be configured correctly, allow those, the traditional way of accessing it has just been web enabled. Once that's been done, that is when you now can start to extend and enhance that experience. And without the developers of the applications on the mainframe being involved, you can now consume the data that you see on the screen and build these templates where you either want to redact information, where you need to maybe want to enhance the look and feel of the application, maybe build additional macros to perform certain interactions with these mainframe applications that you have. Obviously, from a security perspective, I just want to quickly log off from this session. One of the things, unfortunately, because of our license key that didn't allow me to do that now, I could have asked the system to even though I logged in as Kobus on the session, it could have pushed this logon automatically into the session. And that is one of the advantages of using the system, where the user does not need to even know what their user ID is that they can access, or password that they need to access on the system, which enhances the security even further. So even if they then get hold of a terminal emulator that still has got direct access to the mainframe, they will not even know what that password was. That is how strictly you can actually enhance this whole experience. So there was a question, is the customization using HTML templates with JavaScript and CSS, or predefined standard procedures within the system? This is predefined standard procedures within the configuration of these sessions. We normally use a terminal emulator, a Windows terminal emulator, to create these templates, which we then import in the configuration of a session, and that will apply a template on top of what you see. And it has got its own mechanism on how it understands on which screen it is at that point in time and which part of the template must be displayed. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope this was informative. I hope you liked what you saw, and whether this is relevant within your environments. It makes the administration and the management of your mainframe sessions a whole lot easier. It also allows people now to sit at home, especially now during the pandemic, and then securely be able to access sessions and only the stuff that's been assigned to them while they're working from home. Because I know that is one of the biggest challenges that people have seen. People had to jump onto VPN networks, and then the IP addresses are not correct because it's not configured on your host bus adapters to be able to actually front-end processors to connect to your mainframe, because those IP addresses are random. They keep on changing. So those kind of things tend to resolve a lot of these issues. As far as we know, there's a question, will or does Treasury allow this connection? Remember that your security still remains intact as it will be in terms of the authorized users that will access that mainframe session. You're now adding an additional layer of security that can be even monitored in far greater detail when these mainframe sessions are being accessed. Because the access is still being done following the exact standard route as it's already been configured within the government network. As far as I know, this has already been implemented at 1 or 2 government departments. Justin, I'm not sure if you can recall. It just missed me out because I know it's already running at 1 of the government departments. We will get that information for you because we know for a fact it's already being used within government to help with management of your mainframe access.
Yes, that is correct. I will get the details, and you're welcome to email me in that regard. I'll actually put my email up in the comments field for anyone that doesn't have it. Sorry.
Okay. There's a question. Doesn't would like to answer this question live.
Oh, that was an accident. Sorry, I clicked on it by mistake. It just said question. And I was actually wanted to type, what is the question, please? I think it's from Mariki.
Yes.
Mariki, did you have a question?
Okay, I'll just quickly, how can I quickly enable Mariki's audio?
Yosh, I think what they're saying is the system compatible to all the browsers?
Yes, it's all browsers that support HTML5.
Yes,
so this is a very wide range of browsers at the end of the day. It is from Opera, Microsoft Edge, Internet Explorer is still supported, Firefox, Chrome, name it, they're all supported.
I've put my email into the chat field for everyone that requires it, and you're welcome to send me an email with any further questions at a later date.
Yes, thank you so much, Travis, for that presentation. If there's any other questions, like Justin said, please do relay them to himself, or you can just send an email directly to one of the email addresses that's on our website. Please don't forget to go on our website, look at the calendar there. I promise you will not regret it. There's going to be many more coming up events with other vendors, but more specifically focused on NetCB solutions. Thank you so much for once again coming. Don't forget to check out our LinkedIn as well as our other social media platforms. Speaking of which, our YouTube actually has new videos up. You can check those up and see if they are to your taste palettes. And if they don't, let us know. Let us know what more you'd like to see and what your organization is more structured towards. You might never know. You might not be the only one that's struggling with certain solutions. Once again, my name is Boipelo Serpela, and thank you so much for everyone to join us. This video is up on our website. It has been recorded. Thank you so much, everyone.
It will be up on the website within 24 hours.
Oh. Yes.
Okay.
So please feel free to do that and just check that out and let us know. Any questions whatsoever, we're open to them. All right, everyone, have a lovely rest of your day, and we hope to see you again at one of these. All right, cheerio, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.